Hi, my name is Matteo Mazza and I'm a pharmacy consultant at Hutchings Consultants. Many thanks for listening to part 2 of our podcast, A Guide to Buying a Pharmacy through Hutchings Consultants. I'm also joined by 2 colleagues who will introduce themselves now.
Hello there, I'm Scott Hayton, Director at Hutchings Consultants.
And I'm Paul Steed, a Senior Pharmacy Consultant at Hutchings Consultants.
This is the second of 3 podcasts we have produced in order to assist buyers in understanding the process involved in buying a pharmacy business from Hutchings Consultants, and covers how to prepare an offer and also gives some tips on how to make your offer more attractive to a seller. Before we begin, please note this podcast has been produced for information purposes only and should not be relied upon as part of the legal process entered into during a sale, as we always recommend that parties consult with their own professional advisors wherever necessary. So I've had a great viewing and I'd like to make an offer on a pharmacy that Hutchings Consultants has for sale. Can you explain what happens next?
In the first instance, come back to us. If we haven't already sort of spoken, feedback to us, let us know that it is an opportunity you want to take forwards. So we can have a discussion about that, and from our perspective we can explain to you what the sort of process is. So with some of our sales, when we are marketing that pharmacy, we'll have a period of marketing where viewings are sort of taking place, and then we will set a formal offer date. But not in all cases. So it may be that on a particular sort of sale, it may be on an ad hoc basis that offers will be considered by the seller. So as I say, by speaking to us and let us know that it's something you want to take sort of forwards, we can explain to you what the process is going to be in that particular sale, basically.
And give you an idea of timescales. Also, we have an offer template form and a deposit form as well. We'll always look to take a deposit to secure the business and grant that buyer a period of exclusivity going into the legal process. So the sooner you let us know, we can have that conversation, give you a bit of guidance, you understand the timescales that we're working to, what the process is going to be. But I think another important thing to say is that we have our processes, but we're acting for the seller, and sometimes whatever they decide can overrule. So it's always a little bit of a, test it and kind of see how we go. But speak to us, we'll let you know what the proposals are and what you need to do next.
I think touching on the offer letter template that we sort of send through, when buyers are at that stage, I would certainly recommend strongly that they read through the letter. If they have any queries, by all means pick up the phone, speak to us, email us, come back to us to say
it's better to clarify things in advance, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think when they are at that point when they are submitting an offer, they should complete that offer letter as fully as possible.
More information, the better.
Absolutely.
Because we've got to convey this information. I mean, the offer form itself is designed to extract the information that we need to pass to the seller. But the more information, the better we can demonstrate that offer. Because obviously, we'll run through everything with the seller. And again, if you've got your advisors that you've spoken to before, based on experience, all of that information comes into it. We'll want to, at the stage at which you're putting your offer forward, we'll want to know all the details of how are you going to complete this deal, how are you going to fund it. So we'll be asking for anything to document those finances, bank statements, letters from your lender or your broker, something from your accountant, something else from your other bank demonstrating your level of equity, as much information as possible.
So can you just confirm what proof of funding you actually need?
Well, we need to, Scott sort of mentioned, we need to sort of understand if that person is, or that party is successful in securing that business, how will they pay for it, essentially? And we've got to be able to demonstrate that to the seller, our client, and particularly as well, bearing in mind that in many cases there will be offers coming in from multiple parties, not just sort of one. So as a buyer, my recommendation is put yourself in the best possible position to secure that pharmacy. So it is being transparent with us. It is providing up-to-date bank statements. Again, sometimes we'll ask for a bank statement, and it may be I've had instances where they've been a year old, which obviously doesn't, it's not relevant to that particular time. So, it needs to be contemporary, it needs to be relevant information. We don't need to see account numbers, sort codes. We just need to have an understanding of that where those funds are. Some of the offers that we receive, there may be, for example, family who are supporting that party in making their bid, and they, as part of that support, they have said, okay, well, I'm prepared to give you or lend you X amount of pounds. Again, we need to have an understanding of where that money is, how readily available it is. Is it in shares? Is it cash in a bank account somewhere? Again, we need to have sort of supporting evidence of that, so that what we then are able to do is present an offer to our client, and
every pound of that offer is accounted for essentially, either through bank funding, from which the broker or the bank has said, we've looked at the business, it's subject to valuation, but based on the person's assets and what they've got, we can lend them this amount of money, and we're aware that they've made this offer of X amount.
Absolutely.
And then we tie that together with the other bits and pieces that the buyer is presented to us, so some bank statements. You add it all together, and then you've got enough essentially for the goodwill offer, the stock, any legal and professional advisors, because you've got to factor that in as well.
I was going to say, it's not just the price of the pharmacy.
Yeah, we need to know that someone can get from A to B, and they're not going to run out of money.
And I think, just to finish off on that point, I think when we are speaking to sellers regarding the offers, quite often the seller will ask us for our opinion. And obviously, if we've got offers which are fully funded, we have a good, thorough understanding that and trust in this offer, we can obviously demonstrate that to our client, and it gives us confidence in who we're also recommending as well. So it's about sort of giving comfort to sort of all parties in the process.
It goes back to having good communication all the way through the process.
Absolutely.
So if I've made an offer and it isn't accepted, do I have an opportunity to increase my offer?
To sort of touch on the, I guess, how the offer process is sort of handled, in most of our sales we do have a 2-stage offer process. So when we are ready to set a formal offer date, that will be communicated to all those relevant parties who intend to make an offer. We send them the offer template letter for completion. The offer letter comes back to us with their proof of funding, and what we then do is pass those offers across to our seller for consideration. From our perspective, we do give some feedback to the parties that have offered. It's not a case where we disclose figures, but we give some kind of feedback as to approximately where the level of the offers may be sort of sitting at at this sort of first stage. We then move to usually a second stage offer part of the process, where we do encourage a best and final offer from parties. At that stage, that is a completely confidential stage. So effectively, yes, parties do get a second.
It would be rare. It would be rare that you wouldn't get a second bite of the cherry. There have been instances, and it's normally where a seller overrules us and says, "Look, this party's made an offer. I just want to accept it now." And our advice will normally be, "Well, look, we've got other parties on the table." There have been 1 or 2 cases over the years where someone said, "No, I just want to go with this one." And of course, we've got to take our clients' instructions. But other than that, 99.9% of the time, you get a second bite of the cherry.
So, as a buyer making an offer, how can I make it more attractive to the vendor?
I think, as we sort of mentioned, it's providing full supporting documentation around the funding, completing your offer letter fully, and that's sort of the basics, I guess.
Having good advisors on board.
Absolutely.
We take absolutely everything into consideration. So if you think all the way back to the beginning of the registration process, the whole experience from there through to the offer being put forward, all the information, all the facts, everything that we can, because it's such an important thing for the seller. It's such an important decision to make. We do everything that we can to obviously advise them the best of the better the situation is from our perspective, the more we can convey that to that seller.
I think also in some circumstances I've had cases where a buyer has proposed paying a high deposit, which from the seller's perspective gives perhaps increased security in their mind over perhaps other offers. We've had cases where a buyer has explained that they would give the staff a bonus and taken over the business. So from a seller's perspective, who they're handing over their staff effectively, it gives them comfort that the incoming new owner will look after the staff as well.
The other thing that I sometimes suggest to parties as well is just to put a covering letter with your offer, because it gives a more personal edge.
Yes.
Sometimes in a sale you've seen 7 or 8 different individuals, and most of those are at the end of the day when you're tired, and by the end of the process people start to merge, you can't quite remember people's faces, and it just gives a more personal edge, and I think that can be helpful.
We have now come to the end of this podcast, and I'd just like to say thanks to Scott and to Paul for your contribution, which hopefully our listeners will find useful. Please listen to our next podcast to find out what happens after your offer has been accepted. As mentioned, this podcast should only be used as a general guide only, and we recommend you consult with your various advisors throughout the purchase in order to ensure that the relevant areas are suitably covered.